Hi, everyone. It's Jess from Garden Scriptorium. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on. But rather than, make apologies, I'm just going to jump right into it. Today, I have a couple of things for you. First and foremost, a book haul that kind of goes all the way back to January when I picked up two of these books until books that I received just yesterday. So I want to start by saying that first and foremost, they are all historical fiction. And even though I do have a few other books, oh, wait a minute, hang on a sec. I have another book that I picked up that's not historical fiction that I will just mention briefly, and this is Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. I haven't been watching a lot of BookTube, but I seem to be gravitating toward Charlie Heathcote's channel. Yeah, that was one of the books that he mentioned that I thought I would pick up. So I am planning on taking that book on vacation with me in 2 weeks. I'm going camping, and I figured it would be fun to read something that's radically different from everything I've been reading for the past few months and really for the past few years. So the two books that I'm going to start with, the first one is Slammerkin by Emma Donoghue. You'll know her from Room and some other novels. This is set in 1748, I believe. That's an historical period I'm especially interested in by way of some of my teaching and some of the women writers that I've been acquainting myself with from that period. I don't really know that much about it except that I do think it's fictional entirely. It's not based on historical figures. So anyway, this is earlier 18th century or early to mid 18th century. The second book I have is actually also from Emma Donoghue, and that is Life Mask. And this one is, in fact, late 18th century, so 1790 something. It is based on three real life characters. Whether or not they interacted in real life, I don't know, because I don't know as much about this historical period as I might. So the three figures that are represented here would be Anne Dammer, who's a young widow of eccentric tastes and the only female sculptor of her time. Another woman, Eliza Farren, who is now reigns as the Queen of Comedy at Drury Lane Theatre. And then the third figure is the Earl of Derby, inventor of the horse race that bears his name. So I did actually start this book back in January, but I just think my mind was not in a place to concentrate at that moment. And I ended up just shifting away from it and reading something that was just a little bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say like easy because it wasn't hard reading per se, but just something that just felt a little lighter on the palate. So anyway, so I have those two books that I am probably going to read one of them this summer. I don't think I'll read both of them, but I don't want to read too many things by the same author when I have so many other books I want to read. The next book I want to mention is actually set in the century before. I think it's set right around the Restoration. This is The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst. And interesting journalist turned novelist. Britta has mentioned this book to me several times. I'm sure I've seen other people talk about it as well. But I finally decided that this was the summer that I was going to pick up a copy of it. So I am in the middle of reading two things right now, which I'll talk about a little later. But I'm definitely planning on picking this up next. So this will be the thing that I pick up when I'm ready to start a new book. And then finally, I have two other books, still historical fiction. Both of these books are published by History Through Fiction, which is a fairly new micro press. Now, I'm not sure how long they've been around. Maybe it's been a year or two. I don't know how many titles they have. I want to say like maybe around a dozen. I know they have a new one that just came out, I think this week. But I'm curious about them. They have basically, if you look at their website, their information both for people who would purchase books from them and also people, writers who would submit. It really emphasizes historical accuracy. And it even mentions things like footnotes or extended bibliographies, etc. And so I think that really the point is that these are books that are meant to be excellent works of fiction, but historically accurate. That's sort of what I'm getting from the website. Although the first book that I just sort of picked up and flipped through, I don't see anything that looks like footnotes per se. However, I did pick up two books new, which I don't usually do either, but I am curious about them for a couple of reasons. One of them is, if I'd known about them 6 months ago, maybe I would have just submitted my own, my manuscript instead of self-publishing. I'm also very curious about them because the editor, or the person who's essentially the publisher, whose name I've forgotten and I will put down below, has really kind of created an interesting, I think, online platform and forum for writers of historical fiction. I've watched a few events. There are interviews with their writers, but one of the last things I watched had an interview with this writer, Ezra Harker Shaw, and three other writers whose work had been published elsewhere. So I do think that, with the exception of YouTubers talking about historical fiction, there's not a lot going on YouTube with regards to historical fiction as a genre. And I think that it's just one more place where you can learn about new books, and from a writer's perspective, learn more about writers, what motivates them, what inspires them, what kinds of challenges they face as they write. So anyway, The Osceola's Cry, subtitle A Novel of the Shelleys by Ezra Harker Shaw, focuses on really the working relationship between Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley and Percy Bysshe Shelley. From what I've read about Shaw, they did a PhD in which they focused on that relationship in a more academic setting. So I'm assuming it was a lit PhD, but I'm not sure. Nonetheless, they definitely, as a writer, have super street cred, as a poet and also as a playwright, although I think this is the first novel. So I am very curious about it. I'm always fascinated by novels written by poets because they tend to be more, linguistically satisfying and challenging. But I'm also interested in this period as well, and I'm just curious to see what they do with this story and how it's presented. So this is something I'm not sure when I'll read it. I probably will read it before the fall, simply because I'm teaching a Brit Lit 2 survey in which we end essentially with the Shelleys. So I would like to be able to go into the semester having a better awareness of some historical novels that cover the period that we're studying. And that goes for the Emma Donoghue books as well. I'm probably going to read at least one of those before before the semester begins. So anyway, I will definitely report back on this. And I'm just kind of curious about editing, the quality of the manuscript. I'm just very interested. I think when you have a new press that comes out, and I feel given their agenda, and also I would say given the diversity of the books that are on their website, I just feel like I want to support them, and hopefully I'll still want to support them when I'm done reading the books. The other book that I have, and I want to mention too that again, it's a beautiful cover, and it definitely evokes a certain sort of historical period for sure. That isn't exactly true about the second novel by them, or produced by History Through Fiction, that I picked up, and that is South of Sepharad, the 1492 Jewish expulsion from Spain. And the author here is Eric Z. Weintraub, and here is the cover. So it doesn't look necessarily early modern, but it definitely is an interesting cover design. And so just looking visually at the books, I'm very impressed with the cover art, because cover art is, I think, challenging and controversial. And I had my own struggle trying to figure out what I wanted for a cover. So I'm interested, again, in this historical period. I'm interested in stories about early modern Jewish communities, as well as Islamic communities as well. So anyway, here we are. This is another book I'm going to look at. I'm going to be teaching Arnold Wesker's play The Merchant, which is a retelling of The Merchant of Venice from the perspective of, or at least in the context of, Shylock and Antonio being friends, who are kind of book buddies, actually. I'm teaching a special topics Shakespeare adaptation class, and we're doing all plays, like literary plays, not like, commercial plays. And so I might read this just because it's a book, it'll be another perspective that deals with that with the forced expulsion of Jews throughout Europe. So anyway, we'll see about this one. Weintraub is an MFA person. He, I believe, has published quite a few short stories. So these are not, these are people that are, they're already writing, they're trained, etc. This could, in fact, History Through Fiction be, an amazing venue for, academic novelists, for all I know. But anyway, I'm curious to see what these books are like, and I will definitely report back on them. And I will put some information about History Through Fiction down below if you're not familiar with them and you're interested. So, all right. So the final thing I want to mention is my own book, which came out on Saturday, so not quite a week ago. The ebook has been available on NetGalley, and it still is available on NetGalley. So if there's anybody out there in BookTube land who really is interested in historical fiction, in particular the period after Mary, Queen of Scots, during the reign of James VI, during his youth, his extreme youth, at least to begin with, and prior to him going to England and ruling there, I would definitely encourage you to check it out. If you're interested, I'll put a link down below for NetGalley, so you can go directly to that page and request the book if you want to. I also will include a universal link that will list all of the places it's being sold. As far as the ebooks are concerned, I did decide to go wide, so it's pretty much everywhere except Google Play. I don't seem to be getting any traction per se. I mean, right now the only sales I'm seeing are on Amazon, which is, the most convenient for everyone. Currently, the paperback is only available on Amazon. Now, I am trying to make it available via Ingram Spark as well, which has the potential anyway of getting the book into Canadian and UK bookstores, potentially. But I'm struggling with a few technical difficulties with Ingram Spark, and everybody talks about how challenging they are. Anyway, I did get the final proof. Unfortunately, it has not for resale on it. That's what you get when you go with Amazon KDP. I did order 5 author copies of this, mainly because 1 or 2 will get given away. 1 will go to the Copyright Office. Maybe 1 has to go to the Library of Congress as well. I'm not sure. But I also have ordered proof copies from both Ingram Spark and also Draft to Digital. And the Ingram Spark one came already. It's quite a bit brighter. The green feels, to me anyway, in person, much closer to the PDF documents. When I cracked the spines on them, though, this one kind of bent a bit. You can see there's a little bit of a line, whereas the other one looks pretty intact. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to go with. I also don't know what this is going to look like when we don't have the not for resale banner on it. But we'll see. It's not of concern to any of you because should I be doing a book event in the next 4 to 5 months, it's going to be in southern Utah where none of you live. So anyway, but I did want to mention it. And for those of you who've been with me for a while, you do know roughly what the book is about. If you are newer or just can't remember, it does focus really on the first favorite of James VI. It takes a little while to get there. He shows up midpoint. It does deal quite a bit with the religious and political controversies, which really sort of lay the groundwork for the arrival of this very charming, seductive, French-raised Catholic into the court of a vulnerable adolescent boy who is starting to sort of come into his power. And so it does, to the best of my ability, tell it from the perspective of what happened event-wise. But of course, there's a great deal that is sort of invented around interpersonal relationships, etc. It is not a sexy novel, my friends, I will tell you that. And mainly it's because my main character is kind of a repressed Calvinist who becomes a little more relaxed and open as he moves along. And in real life, the man was a Calvinist, but he eventually took orders in the Anglican Church when he was in England after he followed the king there. So, it is definitely a character arc that has further to go to get him to being someone who's maybe a little more open or permissive. The other thing I wanted to mention too, for those of you out there who, like me, could not wait and didn't care about historical accuracy, but could not wait for George and Mary to show up on Stars. There, that series tells the story of the king's final boyfriend. My novel tells the story of the king's first boyfriend. I guess perhaps in maybe a PG fashion. The other thing I wanted to mention too, because I knew it was happening, episode 4, if you've seen it, they're digging up this metal heart thing. And I was like, like I knew exactly what it was. And so the heart belongs to Lord Lennox, who was Esme Stuart, who was that cousin who was raised in France, who became the king's first boyfriend. So if you are interested in seeing the backstory of that teased out a bit, with regards to both, the heartbreak of the king, the loss of this relationship, but also all of the political complications that relationship really created. That's what my novel focuses on. So anyway, I look forward to reading all of these books. Again, I'm definitely thinking Ursula Flight first, then Mother Thing, and then I'm probably going to pick up, I think I'm probably going to pick up the book on the Shelleys next, and we'll just see how that goes. So I will be reporting back at some point. I'm going to try to do a weekly thing, but we'll see. And again, I like the idea of doing it always on the same day, but you know what? That's not always convenient. So I'm going to post today. Thursday, June 6th. I am currently reading 2 books. My friend Joe Smith and I are reading, I think, the last of the big Trollope novels. And at 99 chapters, it's one of the biggest. We're reading He Knew He Was Right. And I think we're around chapter 88, 89. So we've got a few more days that we'll be reading that together. I also, on a whim, just sort of picked up Villette by one of the Brontes. I can never remember which one. One of my students was working on Villette for her senior project. And, I read it a long time ago. And I just did what a lot of people would do. I got myself sort of, I really dug into the book via her, essay. So now I just decided to pick it up and just kind of see all the parts that she didn't write about, which is kind of fun to do, actually. Anyway, I'll sign off for now. Thanks for your time. I hope everybody's having a good time. We finally hit 90-degree weather here in southern Utah yesterday, and it's hot. I'm just not very happy about that. Get about an hour or so of yard work in before we all rush into the house and try to cool down. Anyway, I hope everyone's having a great summer so far, and hopefully I'll talk to you next week.